The US has for the longest time have the world reserve currency with the dollar. The way it worked was the dollar was used for the majority of the global trade, and so what the US ended up exporting was both the dollars and also US debt. The rest of the globe used to buy US debt, and as a result, the US could maintain a negative trade balance, exporting less than importing, and the difference was made by the exporting of the dollar and at the same time increasing the amount of debt that the federal government held, and that without any consequences. So as you can see in this image, the US has been exporting less than importing, but that has been changing. First of all, the dollar is changing its status slowly out of the world reserve currency, and so there is less demand for dollars and for US debt. What has been happening is that the percentage of the dollar in the world trade has been reducing in the past few years. But also the amount of US debt that the foreigners hold has been reducing over time. And now the majority of the buyers of US debt is either the central bank, the Fed, or pension funds. Pension funds are technically underwater, and the Fed is just printing more money to buy treasuries, which will eventually cause inflation because you're increasing the money supply. As you can see in this image, foreigners used to buy US debt and now they're sellers. So if the US doesn't reduce spending, inflation will be high for the foreseeable future. None of the sources of income are likely to increase significantly, so the US needs to reduce its spending. And that's the chart of the federal budget showing that. Some argue the US is fine, there are no better places to park your money, and foreigners will keep buying US debt. That's not the case, and you can see in the numbers. So one example is China over time was a buyer of US treasuries and now has been a seller for the past decade. And what would they buy instead? For one, they would buy gold. That's what Russia and China have been doing, and other emerging markets have been doing. The US weaponized the financial system after it went after Russia, and it was a shot in its own foot. As you can see, the purchase of gold of central banks have been increasing, and the purchase of US treasuries has been reducing. The same is true for emerging markets. They've been buying gold reserves. The second possibility is to buy American stocks, and that's what the Swiss National Bank has been doing and buying. And that was what happened during the CARES Act scare. A lot of entities were selling treasuries and buying American stocks. The last possibility is to buy Bitcoin. And that's what El Salvador has been doing. That's the most novel approach, and I think the smartest approach. Over the long term, this will probably be the one that pays up the most because the supply of Bitcoin is constant, unlikely with gold that the supply has been increasing over time. On all these scenarios, the US federal government needs to figure out a path forward. There's no way out without reducing spending. So the US federal government needs to reduce spending, or the state of the dollar and the federal government will not be in great shape in the next decade.